Hi, everybody. It's Mike here.
It's Harry.
And welcome again to another special episode of Movie Bounce. And we've only are days away from Christmas. We've just covered Return of the Jedi. Where are we going to now? What's the next episode we're going to dive into as the excitement builds for Christmas?
So yeah. I
Hold
don't
on,
know
I'm
how.
too excited. You're gonna have to hold off on that. My excitement can't be contained. Like I can't be held back.
Well, yeah. Let's see how people get when they find out that
I'm bouncing a ball now, Harry.
we're bouncing it straight to Phantom Menace because we're tackling these movies again. We're doing them in the order that they were released.
Okay, my ball just dropped. You mentioned Phantom Menace, and I think the ball deflated a little bit.
No, we're gonna get more
Yeah,
energy.
pick that ball back
into
up. All right, we're gonna
We're
get
gonna
that
pick
ball
it
back
back
up. It's
up.
Phantom Menace. We're gonna dive right. We're gonna have fun with this one because you know what? Phantom Menace. I can't say it. It's not a fun film.
If you can't have fun with it, then it's just gonna be a depressing episode. And it's the holidays.
No, I meant the movie, not the episode. The episode's gonna be great. We're gonna keep that ball. But the thing is, we're gonna get into it. But fun isn't the first word I think of when I think of Phantom Menace.
No, we're gonna make this fun. So picture it. You're a Star Wars fan.
All right.
You know, you've seen the movies, you love them. It's all about Star
I love
Wars.
them. I love them.
You know, depending on how old you are, depending on how
12?
invested in this franchise,
Mildly.
all that stuff.
Mildly.
You've heard rumors that George Lucas always wanted to tell this larger story. He had scripts and scripts of he wanted 9 movies. He had 9 episodes that he wanted to make. He wasn't ready to make them yet. But now finally you're starting to hear rumors. He wants to tell the story of Darth Vader. How did Darth Vader become the twisted evil, Sith Lord that he became?
Okay,
So
before
now
I
you're
answer.
like, yeah, we're gonna learn about what happened with Obi-Wan. We're gonna hear about the Clone Wars, and maybe we'll see Yoda, and we're gonna figure out how he got all messed up under that mask. And you're like, oh wow, that's gonna be really, really cool. He's got more technology. This is gonna be even better than the originals, right? Are you feeling that with me? Do you feel that hype?
Okay, so I gotta take you back, like a prequel would. Going back to when I first saw Star Wars, Empire, Return of the Jedi, I thought that was done. Story's done, definitively done. And then when the special editions came out, I was like, oh, there's more excitement about these films. And then I had a cousin who's, very familiar with Star Wars, more than I am, more than a lot of people. And then I asked that question, will there ever be an episode 7? And then that person said, well, there's been some chatter, but Lucas came out and said, no, there won't be. There won't be. And I thought that definitively was it. I was way too young, so I thought everything was definitive. So I was like, okay, that's it. We're just never going to see Han Solo or Leia and everything like that again moving forward. But then one day came where there was hope. It was official. Lucas isn't going to move forward with those characters, but he's going to go back. And now you're going to find out the true story of how Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader. And I was like, all right, yeah, that sounds like fun, right? I mean, it's going to get dark. I would assume it's going to get very dark. How dark we're going to get into this path? So I think what my first reaction was if he had this whole story mapped out in his mind, I'm excited. I selfishly wanted those characters back. I wanted Han, Leia, Luke. I just want to see more from them. So I was down for where the story was going to go, but I was like, all right, I'll believe it when I see it. And it actually seemed almost too far away. Still to this day, I feel like those films haven't been made.
Well, I want to just go back. Like, I wanted you to start listing like very obscure characters. Like, I wanted to see him again. Luke, Leia, that guy in the bar, like,
The hairy guy.
yeah, that hairy guy, that dude in Cloud City carrying the ice cream machine.
Right.
But
That guy.
so, but I guess what I want to do is what I'm getting at, which is obviously transparent, is I'm laying the groundwork for what would be when we finally see that movie poster and what's on it. It's a little boy,
And the
his
shadow.
shadow is Darth Vader.
Yes.
And at that point, I'm like,
Yes, that was great. Great poster. Great teaser
well,
poster.
I think the design was very cool, but I couldn't shake the fact that I don't want to hang out with Darth Vader when he's a boy. I don't need to see that. I don't
I
like child protagonists. I never liked them, even as a kid. Um, so now I'm starting to get like nervous because it's not that Star Wars was an adult movie. It was clearly for all ages. But why Star Wars was cool is because it didn't talk down to the audience, and it wasn't childish. It wasn't made for kids, but it could be enjoyed by kids.
that I think, as much as I do like that poster, that I think was the first sign of, all right, there's a distance, there's a disconnect. Like, yeah, and a part of me did think, like, all right, hopefully the whole story is not about when he's a kid, because how much can you really explore with a, was he nine? Nine?
Something like
Well,
that,
something
yeah.
like how much depth can you really kind of mine from that?
Right.
So that's where I go, wait a minute, hold on. All right. That's your focal point for this poster. So that means most of the story most like is going to be surrounded by this kid. I hope not. But the trailer was released one day. I don't know, do you want to set this up or do you want to just
Yeah,
dive right into it?
this is perfect because this is exactly where I was
What
going.
was
You read my mind.
what
So the
was
trailer
your
comes
first
out.
Yeah,
It was
tell me.
back in the heady days of dial-up internet, at least for me. I downloaded that trailer. It probably took like
What was that like
all
waiting?
afternoon.
Like you're just
Probably took
waiting,
all afternoon, and it was one of those
palms
things where you
sweaty.
couldn't, where I don't know, like you had to always, because I had AOL, so you had to be logged in, so you had to have your internet open, so you had, and you were transferring that file. It was before like, we download things differently now, but if you lost your connection, like you had to start the download all over again. So download this trailer, and I watch it, and it's awesome. They have John Williams' Duel of the Fates playing. You see friggin' Darth Maul. You've got Qui-Gon Jinn. You've got young Obi-Wan, and you're like, I'm down for this. This is really cool. There were things in there. You did see Jar Jar Binks in there. You saw some things, and I'm like, I'm not really feeling that, but just overall the energy, the feeling, the atmosphere is like, this is going to be great. There's a lightsaber that has two blades on it. And then that was pretty much it until the movie actually came out. So what was your reaction to the trailer? Were you that invested in the movie that you were like anticipating and watching these trailers?
Well, what I was only familiar with, like who I wanted to see from what I heard, who was cast in the film was Ewan McGregor, because Train Spotting led to that, and he was
Right.
in a few things. It was exhilarating to see the lightsaber again, and when you see the little glimpse of the pod race, obviously those are the most exhilarating. Like it was hard to process that this has been made. That it's like, wow, this is a thing, and I still was like, I'll believe it when I see the 2.5 hours, however long it will be. So it was sort of exhilarating, but at the same time, I didn't know what I was expecting. But it was the false of the lack that I didn't see those familiar characters. I didn't see C3. Oh, well, no, I saw R2D2, but you didn't see C3PO nor.
Well, you saw him, but he wasn't fully built yet.
Right, yeah. So like, and I didn't even know if that was him because he wasn't familiar. It wasn't the gold C3PO
Right.
we're familiar with, and then Chewbacca wasn't. So I was more like, okay, well, it's got some of the elements. But I wasn't as excited after watching it as one might be.
Yeah, man. Like I saw that movie, and it was a tough hang. I think a lot of people wanted to like that movie more. I think I left the theater not liking it, but maybe fooling myself because I was just happy to get new Star Wars. But that movie was just all over the place. Just too many different kinds of tones. Just a lot of bad decisions across the board. From making Anakin a child and starting the movie there, because really then that was the domino. Because and we are going to talk about the other movies, but you've got 3 movies to tell your story, and you've wasted one of them before the kid even like picks up a lightsaber. So you're gonna have to really rush this movie to show how he turns bad. You're gonna have to do a lot of heavy lifting to make me care about him, so that it's tragic when he does turn bad, etc. And it was just kind of confusing, overall, like where are we going from here? And the style was off, if I have to be totally honest. The visual style didn't fit. What was really cool about Star Wars is, a lot of people say it, but it's true, that whole world, that whole universe looked beat up and used and rough around the edges, and sci-fi often didn't look like that. It looked kind of almost very idealistic. But here, a lot of the starships were rusty, dirty, all that stuff. Everything here was just clean and polished, and maybe it was supposed to reflect a better time before the Empire comes to power, but it's that shift. It was unsettling.
Of all the films we talk about in this podcast, you refer to those films as this film. You refer to it as that film. Like you just threw it under a bus. And technically, I think that's what you kind of did. It was fun listening to it because you're like, yeah, this movie sucked in this way. Pretty much. And I agree with you for the most part. But I love the fact that you refer to it as that film. You wanted to get it away from you as soon as possible. Get those, oh my hand, you feel like your hands are dirty just talking about it or something like that. Like you're so beyond underwhelmed. And in terms of my experience, fine. Well, first of all, I think that, we occasionally bring up hype for a film. This film is one of the most, the films that we know in our history. That's one of the most hyped films because there was the whole news of saying, oh, there are people waiting on lines around the block for days, weeks. And you go, this movie can't be that good. And then you kind of believe it to go, oh, if people are going to wait long lines around. And I was like, well, I guess, do I have to wait a long line around my movie theater? And then, no, it's fine to get a ticket. And then you watch it, and I watch it, and a part of me goes, I'm processing it. And again, I was very young processing this movie, and a lot I didn't care about. Like, as I mentioned in the previous episodes, like I cared mostly about those three characters that they did the heavy lifting in episode 4, 5, and 6. Here you got to start from scratch. Except that we know we're familiar with the characters and where they should be. But, Ewan McGregor, as much as I like him, he's got to do that heavy lifting. So does Liam Neeson and the kid. So even while watching and then Jar Jar Binks shows up. I mean, and I here's the thing. I watched it then. It's been a while. I've rewatched it recently. And I tried to, as underwhelmed as I was as the film, and I'll just say that overall, I agree with a lot of the points that you made. When I watched it the first time, it dragged. The kid was disengaging, and then I really got on board. All of a sudden, it's like the movie really strapped its boots, and the podcast. You got a nice scene. The pod race. You got a nice scene there, but then it was that, when Darth Maul shows up battling Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, that's when the film just like, whoa, it's rolling at a different level. And that's where it's like, whoa, this is great. How did you go from being like dormant? It seemed like the pulse level of this movie was just that it just really sparked, and the fireworks it just blew up at the end in a great way. I still love that ending. I love that scene between all of them, and a lot of it's due to the performances. Ewan McGregor is great, and then you've got this solid villain, I really love that. That's when I left that theater. The only good bright points was it's a brief moment of the pod race, that last sequence, and that score, that John Williams score. I wanted to listen to that score again, and that's really the only pieces that resonated from this film. Now, that was then. Rewatching it now, I tried going into the movie with going, all right, it's been a long time. I vaguely remember it. Let me go in and being, with my expectations very low, let me try to embrace this film. Now, what did I embrace recently? I watched it on Blu-ray. The thing I noticed that really does stand out, Ari, is that it was shot on film. Have you have you seen this on a Blu-ray?
No, I haven't actually.
So let me say this. It looks because it's that cusp between right before we went digital. Yeah. Where you can tell when it's really overly special effects or crazy, and we're going to get into that with episode 2. But here it's like, I really appreciated it more because it was like, wow, it's just a different texture to it that it felt, even though you can tell it's on green screen a lot of the time when there's the huge action set pieces. Like Qui-Gon Jinn running through the forest, and it looks like he's trying to pretend to run over some bushes. Yeah. But that kind of worked. I felt it being a little more grounded. What took me out of the film is what you mentioned, the performance of the kid. Like it's nails on the blackboard. It seems like it was really rough for Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson to really interact with the kid. Like they got to make it look like he's charming when he's clearly not. It was just the casting on this, it just didn't work. And of course there are easy shots. There's low hanging fruit to attack this film, and I'd rather not. We don't have to spend time on Jar Jar, and I wouldn't want to kind of dig at this kid.
Aliens that populate the movie, which
from the very beginning, I know, just right off the bat, you're like, whoa, I forgot about all this stuff, but I'm like, this is That's tough. Like, is Disney going to erase a lot of this stuff? Can they do that?
Yeah, I'd be really interested to see how they handle it. It's just pretty ridiculous. I mean, the movie came out in 1999, and it's
Yeah.
like, wow.
Yeah, it's shocking. But still, it's like you had those elements there, and then but you're really the focal point of these characters here that you're on the journey with. I did like a bit in terms of the cinema, the scope, the Lucas's imagination. I do like it when you kind of see how animated everything is. Again, kind of shot on film. I did like that, but it seems to go on for too long. And this, I think, is the big through line through these prequels is that, we talked recently about Tenet. I mean, one thing we didn't discuss is how it's edited so quickly and like that. But man, shots go on for a long time within these movies where it's just Qui-Gon Jinn walking, strolling into a room, taking a seat. These long shots, which yes, it looks great, but it doesn't really hold up. It's less engaging. I feel just more distant from the film as I watch it.
In a better movie, it would actually draw you in, I think. There are
Yes.
certain movies that use that to its advantage. In this one, it's just, yeah, because you're just prolonging this awful experience.
Right. It didn't earn anything yet. Like, it's like what they say with like stand-up comedians, right? If Seinfeld, who's a well-known comedian, if he goes on stage at on stand-up today, everyone applauds. Oh my gosh, it's Seinfeld! But all that energy goes out the window in 30 seconds because then you got to tell jokes and you got to earn that laughter. Same thing here. Yes, when the Star Wars da-dang goes on, we're all cheering, but then you got to earn that, and it seems like Lucas is like he's just having a stroll and just going, yeah, we're gonna get to these points and you're gonna love it, and taking our attention for granted.
And no matter how you slice this movie, and I think there's probably three ways to slice it. First, obviously, is the performances. If they're great and you're not a Star Wars fan, well, you'd say, well, actually, I just love the way Ewan McGregor played that role. And I don't like sci-fi, but man, like I bought into it and I just loved watching him act. You can look at it from like a movie standpoint. Like I'm not huge into Star Wars, but I like the original ones. They told a good story. And then finally,
Right.
you could look at it as a Star Wars fan. And I think any and all of those movie viewers were equally let down. Performances not great. There were a lot of strong actors and actresses in that movie, but again, they did the best with the material that they had. If you think about it as just a regular movie, the movie just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not a good movie overall. And then lastly, as a Star Wars movie, as part of this saga, I mean, you're going to be let down too. You're going to see things that are kind of disappointing. I didn't think it was totally cool, like how it's so like there's all these weird like trade federation kind of weird negotiations and stuff like that. Just I didn't really want to see that. And then also just like you start to see more of these characters that back in the day you didn't see a ton of them. It was weird as a Star Wars fan to now see the Emperor before he becomes the Emperor, and how is he able to kind of hide in plain sight? Like there are all these questions that you had too around it. I just found no point of entry where I could really enjoy it, other than just the brand name of Star Wars.
Yeah. I mean, I can only speak for myself here, and I know there are defenders of this film, those that grew up when they were kids watching this film, they're very young, and it was like one of the first movies they saw, and they appreciated it, and I get that. But at the same time, I remember my viewing experience with Episode 4, when I was a kid, and I only briefly was engaged for the few scenes, but that energy between those three characters, that dynamic, was so just it did shine right through, and you get it, you're on board, that energy is just so electric. Here you got three characters, they're in the same ship, and it's all disconnected. I mean, the best is Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, but it's not firing on all cylinders. I mean, it's fine, but it just adds a different energy to the film, which is fine, but when everything else that's supposed to support it falls flat, that's why I feel like I'm left going, yeah, I'm disengaged. It's it's unfortunate, but it's like, I feel like this. You know what? I'm going to save this. Actually, let me stop there, because I have a way in which I don't normally do this, but I'd say I feel like this film would work better had another element been introduced, but I'm going to save that for the next episode.
All right.
But
That's a bit
I'm
of
going
a
to keep
teaser.
Right, because while we're rewatching it, I go, well, I'd probably be more invested if a certain other thing happened. And so it's not changing well, yeah, we'll go into that later. Anything else more that we want to bring out that we really like?
Well, I really like Darth Maul. I think he looks awesome. I think would have been an even more tremendous villain. But I don't understand why like they were just rushing to kill him right away. That was really disappointing. The other
Do you
thing,
think it would have been better if he had shown up earlier in the film? Like, I feel like that's what's missing. Like, why didn't we have an opening scene with Darth Maul like they do in many films, right? The shark from Jaws. Show Darth Maul and establish those stakes as we talk about from the very beginning, that he's there and you're just waiting for him to come. So then a lot of the beats they even have through the story, well, then you'd have this other layer of like, oh, he's going to come back and our protagonists are going to have to face him. But no, at the very beginning of the movie, you're not even aware of his existence until later on.
yeah, it's
Don't
just
you think?
it's a squandered opportunity. He could have been like, the reason why people love Darth Vader was because he had a lot of screen time. They gave him room to breathe. They didn't do it with Darth Maul, which was really weird to me because it was also just you knew who the villains were, but it was very weak because they were all. I think George Lucas was trying to be a little too clever with all of the different kind of behind the scenes like machinations of like Darth Sidious or whatever. But what ends up happening is you're muddling the message, and this isn't Shakespeare. This is not a sophisticated movie or sophisticated storytelling. What it needs to succeed is it needs to be a damn good adventure movie, and it needs to. There's nothing wrong, and we've said this. There's nothing wrong with tropes if you do them the right way.
Yeah, and why, if this person, George Lucas,
That guy.
I'm just going to refer to him as this person throughout the rest of this podcast. Like 9 episodes devoted to his idea, and I just call him this person. If he had this idea in his head, he like this was going from back just in '77, so over 22 years, and this is what was in his head. How is this not fine tuned to the point where? Like what I don't understand is what reaction was he looking to get out of the audience? And I think if there's any, that last act, that's where most of his energy seemed to have lied there in order to getting that right. But was it all just about the wow ending and everything else was kind of left to kind of like have us just follow along willy nilly? I don't know. I don't know why his initial film Star Wars was so engaging, and this one he just chose to kind of. I don't know. Is it just a matter of like too much time has gone by and you've gotten a little bit too comfortable and you assume everyone's going to follow you?
No one's going to challenge you. You get set in your ways. You're not hungry anymore. I also feel like, there's a lot more interested in special effects. And, the original trilogy was very revolutionary for its time in that regard too. But it's so funny because I don't want to be that person who complains about George Lucas ruining Star Wars because ultimately it is his creation. And we now have seen, he's now done 6 movies, right? Mm-hmm. So the more body of work he has, maybe we start to understand what Star Wars really is. So we think it's about this or we think it's supposed to be this way, but who can really know but George Lucas? So, if he had made all 9 movies, then maybe we'd be like, actually, you know what? Star Wars isn't good. It's not something that I like. Like I just happen to like this one, this particular trilogy, or it's an album from like an artist. Like maybe I thought I liked The Who, but after listening to 4 albums and I only like 2, I start to question.
My excitement was definitely deflated after watching this.
Absolutely, and let's not forget that up until this movie came out, George Lucas only directed 1 Star Wars movie, and he had help.
American Graffiti.
Right. Well, but I mean to say within Star Wars, and he also had help on the scripts certainly for Empire and Return of the Jedi. So already we're mainlining George Lucas with Phantom Menace again, and now we're starting to see like he needs collaborators that are his equal, because he's got a lot of great ideas, but you need to have someone come in and kind of shape them better for him.
Yeah, and this film definitely would. I feel like this film would have been so much better had he just written the script and gotten a different director. J.J. Abrams, if he had directed this film, I think it would be pretty solid.
Sure.
And I think that if they handed this off to another director, they're gonna be like, oh, I don't want to upset. They're gonna do their best because they're like, I don't want to let down George Lucas. It's like that would have been the best decision. Is just yeah, Lucas, you can write where the story's got to go, and then just have someone else kind of shepherd this story,
But
like
even
Dave
then,
Filoni is doing with the Clone Wars and
right,
Mandalorian.
right. But even then, I think there's still a lot of issues that I have just with the actual story. I already harped on Anakin being a child. I won't focus on that. There are decisions that Lucas made that I think is just kind of odd for me because,
Dialogue, or
well, the dialogue
I
is,
think
is,
that
is very poor. There's one specific thing that I'll mention because it always bothered me. It's very esoteric, I think. So apparently, and as I understand it, so you can only have like two Sith together. There's like a master and apprentice, right? So I think there's like Darth Sidious, and then there's Darth Maul or whatever. That's just such a wasted opportunity. It means that you're only going to be stuck with two villains of that level, and like it just seemed like you have all these Jedi. Why wouldn't you want to have all these Sith eventually come in and have like a lot of conflict that way? To me, I just felt like that just seemed odd. Like there seemed to be so much potential that was squandered with these movies, and that's definitely one aspect of it.
yeah, the focus seemed to have been really, really off on
Right,
this.
right. There was just all of these strange kind of rules that were established that didn't need to be.
When Lucas finished writing the script, did anyone ever read it and go, "What's compelling about this?" Where is that? How do you keep turning the pages to the script in the first 60 pages of this? I don't know. I feel like that would be the question that would be asked of him. I don't know. That's just my kind of take on it. But it's just maybe it's because you assume that the final result, is going to be more engaging than what's on the page. But if it's not on the page, well then you're going to really have to do some really heavy lifting to make this look visually
Right, and then there's
engaging.
an army of people who had to design these characters who probably made it better than it might have even ended up. But
Right.
here's the other thing though, because you're talking about like asking the very astute question like, did anyone read it and ask why it was compelling? I think a lot of people were really excited to bring this to life, and again, like I think you're right. I think a lot of people thought that like, okay, well we're gonna work with this and we're gonna make it good. But then there's also the side of me that wants to say most people just knew it was going to be a hit. Like they knew that they were just going to strike gold, and they didn't really care. Like I don't think a lot of people necessarily were too concerned with the script itself because they're just like, well, we have these action figures and these board games and these fruit snacks. So like they didn't care. They just wanted that vessel to sell all this merchandise.
Where the first Star Wars films were like, people saw it, they're excited, they went to see it again, and then that excitement kind of stayed with them. Those characters resonated. I feel like after this movie, at least it's how I felt. It's like, yeah, you have your reaction, and then you're just thinking about what you got to do next. Like, and you could like the movie. But at
Right.
some point, you're like, you can't. There's not much meat to really to play with. You don't have much to play with this. You're processing the fact that you finally saw another entry in this franchise, but what do you got to really hold on to here? And again, I like things did stand out, but even when I try to look at it again with kind of different eyes, I try to be like, okay, let me mine this for the good stuff. And like I said, a lot of it's due to just time and now me appreciating the film aspect and just the way it does look. Like I didn't take my eyes off the screen, but it was more of a chore to keep them on there. Yeah, I don't have any need. I say this to you sometimes. I'm like, for certain movies, how many more viewings do I have left on particular movies? Like, if there's zero viewings left of me, then I'll never watch it again. Phantom Menace,
Make it a
I'm
one.
out. I'm out. I'm out. I can't watch it again. I'm done. There's nothing more I can get out of this. If I want to see that scene, I mean, in its entirety, I mean, like, if I want to see that Darth Maul scene, yeah, I can put it on YouTube. I'll watch that because that's like that's a nice dance. That's a dance, a music video, and it's very well done. I mean, almost flawless, almost flawless. Anything else? I mean, it sucks because I don't want to shit in this movie because I know that so many people have been doing that. And I've only heard because I don't try to listen to chatter after another Star Wars movie was released recently. There's been more people supporting this film.
Well, it's more trendy to go back because, right, then it sounds like cooler to support something that everyone's is shitting on. But look, sometimes bad is bad, to quote Huey Lewis in the News.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear them, to hear what they have to say, because, like, what am I not getting? Am I
Huey Lewis
missing
in the
something
News?
completely?
I'll let you grab some albums.
Exactly. If that score, if that was playing throughout this whole movie, damn, that would be good.
Instant classic.
Listen to Huey Lewis in the News while watching Phantom Menace. I'll roll with that. Anything more you want to say about Phantom Menace?
No, you know what? Like, it's going to sound like a cop-out, but, people have been talking ad nauseum about this movie for many, many years. I was happy that we took it for a spin and kind of gave it our own bounce. But, yeah, beyond that, it doesn't make much more sense to give this movie the time of day.
Right. So it's December 19th, 2020, and we're saying it's not worth giving this movie the time of day.
We were charitable. We were infused with the holiday spirit enough to talk about it for about 35 minutes. But
and listen, 9
days.
9 days, of this 9 days leading up to Christmas, hey, not all of them can be winners, you know what I mean?
They can.
But, that'll be it. All right, we'll see you next time on episode 2.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to not miss a single bounce.
We'll catch you next time, and don't forget to leave reviews on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you listen to Movie Bounce.